Good description. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to come. We're going to really change gears here and talk about what's going on in the rest of the world in terms of marketing to patients. I'm going to start with the U.S. That's the market I'm most familiar with. U.S. is a fee-for-service model, and the vast majority of ophthalmologists are in private practice. Medicare pays for everyone over 65, so there's a kind of a universal coverage. The payment is limited in terms of the amount paid, but there's no limitations on who can get surgery. So anyone over 65 covered by Medicare is automatically covered. There's private insurance for the vast majority of all others. There's only 11 million out of the 322 million in the U.S. that are not covered. The prices are set by Medicare, and private practice, private insurance tends to pay the same amount as Medicare does. All the policies have deductibles and copays, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how much those are. All surgery and all eye surgery in the U.S. is outpatient unless there's some other condition that keeps the patient in the hospital. There's only a few things that are not included. Multifocal IOLs are not included, toric IOLs. They do pay for a portion of the fee, they just won't pay the extra for the more expensive IOL. Refractive surgery is not covered, dry eye is not covered, contact lenses and routine eye exams are not covered. Okay, if you look in Europe, most of Europe is a fee-for-service. There are a few exceptions. The biggest one is the UK. The UK is run on a budget process, so there's a national budget, and it's administered through what they call trusts, which are like areas where they provide all the care for the patients. There's no age limits. There are budget limitations, so when they set their budget, they'll decide this hospital only can do 5,000 cataract surgeries in a year. When they get to 5,000, they cut it off. And so in a lot of cases, you'll find in the UK that they'll only do one eye per patient, and they'll force the patient to wait for the second eye until the budget's available, or maybe not even have the surgery. Depends on what the economic conditions are at the time. They do have a vibrant private market. The private market's 100% patient pay. So if you don't go the public option and you go the private, you pay everything out of pocket. This avoids the wait times. You get access to advanced technology, which is not available in the national systems, and you get more personalized service. Most ophthalmologists split their time. So they're working in a government hospital 4 days a week, in a private hospital 1 day a week. And this allows them to make extra money and also to have more experience with the advanced technologies. Vision correction is generally not included, and refractive surgery is not included in any of the countries. When you look at China, most care in China is delivered by a network of public eye hospitals. There are copays for all patients, and that varies by hospital, by region. It's a very the system has a lot of variance in it, and there's big differences based on where you live. There's a lot of people blinded by cataract in China. There's about 1.4 million cataract procedures done in China per year. There are 6.5 million done in India. So, and the populations are roughly the same. Chinese are much older than Indians. Because of the one-child policy that's been in place for several decades now, they have a lot of people that are over 65. Most of those people are in the rural areas, and they don't have access to these services at the large eye hospitals. All the surgery is done in more of an inpatient basis, and that's mainly because patients are coming from large distances. So the patients will come in, they'll have cataract surgery, they'll spend the night, so the next day they can have an exam, and if everything goes well, they may be sent on their way. If there's some kind of complication, they may be kept 2 or 3 days. So most of these hospitals in China, these eye hospitals, can have hundreds of beds. I visited one in Guangzhou that had 300 beds in it, and what was interesting is the family provides all the care to the patient when they're in the hospital room. So the family brings in the meals, and they provide all the care for the patient. So when you go through these hospitals in China, there's a lot of people and a lot of family members. It's very, very crowded and very noisy. There is a private care market, and it's a rapidly growing market, and these are mainly corporate eye hospitals and laser centers. In this market, it's 100% patient pay. So the patient pays everything. There's no wait times there. Again, you have advanced technology. The service is much more personalized. The vast majority of employees both in the private and the public are employees. So they're not being compensated on a fee-for-service type arrangement like they are in the U.S. and mainly in Europe. Vision correction is generally not included, glasses or contact lenses or refractive surgery. Multifocal IOLs, toric IOLs are not included. And then there's usually a separate charge if you want what they call a Western IOL, and that would be one that's manufactured in Europe or the U.S. Okay, I'm going to dissect the options in the U.S. To try to shed some light on that. So Medicare and private insurance is paying for the basic care. And in the U.S., that's about what's $1,370 is the amount the government would pay for the surgery, and the patient would be expected to pay $420 out of pocket for a standard surgery. But if you wanted a toric IOL, which is not covered, then the government would pay $1,370 and the patient would pay $1,448. And as you move up the ladder, for instance, if you're getting a refractive lens exchange and you're using a femtosecond laser-assisted cataract system and you've got a multifocal IOL, then the patient's going to pay $4,777. But in all cases where you're over 65 or you have a cataract, then you're going to have an insurance policy that's going to pay for a big portion of that. Okay, the incentives for the U.S. cataract surgeons are obviously to drive volume. In the U.S., the average cataract surgeon does 592 procedures per year, but there's a wide range. It goes from 50 to 5,000. There may be some more than 5,000. I know a couple of them that do 5,000 per year. I don't know anyone that really does more than that. The private practice surgeon has significant fixed expenses, so even though he's getting a lot as far as his portion of the fee, he's paying for all his office space, his staff, his billings technician, in some cases marketing expenses, and there's a 90-day coverage period, so you have to provide pre- and post-operative care all in the fee for the cataract surgery. Obviously, there's incentives for higher volumes, and there's incentives for more premium surgery because remember from the last slide, they're collecting a bigger fee for that. So that's the incentives in the U.S. Now, in the U.S., the source of cataract surgeons, and this is based on a survey of cataract surgeons that we do, and we've also got one now set up for India if anyone here wants to participate. But the source of U.S. cataract patients are primarily from other patients, so word of mouth. The optometrists, there's 30,000 optometrists in the U.S. They frequently run across patients with cataract in annual exams or classes. They refer those usually to a surgeon that they have a relationship with. And there is a provision in the U.S. to, okay, I'm going to move on quick here. Okay, and refractive surgeries, again, the primary source is other patients, but website and internet marketing brings in about 20%, and 15% of all patients come from other sources. The pricing for refractive surgery, most people charge one price for all procedures, but 21% are charging a different price based on the technology, and another 15% are charging a different price based on the amount of refractive error. On top of that, 41% of places offer special pricing. The biggest one is no interest financing, which is available at almost all of them. So they'll sell LASIK as X amount per month, no interest for 12 months, or some cases 24. Internet marketing is big in the U.S. Almost all of the sites have very professional looking websites. They'll emphasize what procedures they're offering, and that brings in quite a few patients. Optometric networking is a big one too. And then they do have other methods. Seminars is one that works fairly well. Press releases and local news builds, local social media thing builds awareness. It's low cost. It's very common in the U.S. and it's very common in Europe. When you get a new piece of equipment, it's a great time to run a press release and let people know about it. I'm going to move on in the interest of time. So the conclusions is, marketing to private pay patients is universal. I know you do it in India. I found out in the past few days here. But for refractive and cataract, it is very common. Glaucoma is starting to become more common, and there are many glaucoma devices available, and people are starting to market them. And right now, most of that's covered by insurance, but there is some private pay stuff going on there. Okay, we do have now on our PracticeScope website, which the web page is there, and if you need, I have a card that has that detail on it if you want to participate in the survey. We'd really appreciate that, and you do get the results from all the survey instantly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very informative talk.